ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಬಂದು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಬೃಹತ್ ನಗರ ಪಾಲಿಕೆ ದತ್ತಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸದ ಅಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಅತಿಥಿಗಳು ಬಂದು ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ರವರು. ಇವತ್ತು ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಂತ ಶೀರ್ಷಿಕೆ ಬಂದು ಆರಿಜಿನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಆಸ್ ಪರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಕಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಕಾನನಿಕಲ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಪೇಟೆಯ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಆಧಾರಿತ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಶೀರ್ಷಿಕೆ ಅಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಅತಿಥಿಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಆಡಳಿತ ಮಂಡಳ ಸದಸ್ಯರಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಶ್ರೀ ಪ್ರಸನ್ನ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರು. ಶ್ರೀ ಪ್ರಸನ್ನ ಕುಮಾರ್ ಅವರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಅತಿಥಿಗಳಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಶ್ರೋತೃಗಳಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಯ ಈ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಸೀರೀಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸೇರಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಕರೋನಾ ಒಂದು ಮುಕ್ತಾಯದ ಹಂತಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಿದೆ. ಆದಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮುಖಾಮುಖಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಅನ್ನೋ ಸಂಗತಿ ಇತ್ತಾನೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕರ ಜೊತೆ ಕೂಡ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ. ಆದಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರನ್ನು ಮುಖತಃ ನೋಡುವಂತಹ ಮತ್ತೆ ನೇರ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ದಿನಗಳು ಬರಲಿ ಅಂತ ಆಶಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಪ್ರಾಯಶಃ 1-2 ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಗಬಹುದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನ ಒಂದು ವಿಶೇಷ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಸೇರಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕರು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಓದಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ ಆದಂಥ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆದಂಥ ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರು ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಯ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳುಗರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕವಾದಂಥ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್, ಫೇಸ್ಬುಕ್ ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆ ಸೇರಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳುಗರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಆದರದ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರು ಒಂದು ವಿಶೇಷವಾದಂಥ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರುವಂಥ ಇದು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಮಹಾನಗರ ಪಾಲಿಕೆಯ ಎಂಡೋಮೆಂಟ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್, ದತ್ತಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂಥ ವಿಚಾರಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೇ ಈ ಎಂಡೋಮೆಂಟ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಮೊದಲಿಂದ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಿಲ್ಪದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಇವತ್ತಿನ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಕಿರುಪರಿಚಯವನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು BMS ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಿಂದ ತಮ್ಮ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಪದವಿಯನ್ನ ಪೂರ್ಣಗೊಳಿಸಿದರು. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಇಂಗ್ಲೆಂಡಿನ ಕಾರ್ಡಿಫ್ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ವೇಲ್ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ನಿಂದ ತಮ್ಮ MPhil ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದರು. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಾಲ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಪ್ರಸಿದ್ಧ ದಯಾನಂದ ಸಾಗರ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಗಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯನ್ನ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದರು. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಅವರು ಕಾರ್ಡಿಫ್ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆಡಮ್ ಹಾರ್ಡಿ ಅವರೊಂದಿಗೆ ತಮ್ಮ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ವಿಷಯವಾದಂಥ ಸೌಂದರ್ಯಾತ್ಮಕ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್, ಎಸ್ಥೆಟಿಕ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಕೋಲಾರದ ವೆಂಕಟಾಪುರದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲಂಕೃತವಾದಂಥ 11ನೇ ಶತಮಾನದ ಹೊಯ್ಸಳ ಶೈಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲಂಕೃತವಾದಂಥ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಿರ್ಮಿಸಲಾದ ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟ ದೇವಾಲಯದ ಯೋಜನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಹಕರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯನ್ನ ಹೊಂದಿದಂಥ ಇವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಷಯಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ತಮ್ಮ ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಮುಂದುವರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಭಾರತೀಯ ದೇವಾಲಯ, ಚಾಲುಕ್ಯ ಮತ್ತು ಹೊಯ್ಸಳ ದೇವಾಲಯಗಳ ಯೋಜನೆಗಾಗಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರು ವಿವಿಧ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಿಲ್ಪ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಕರಾಗಿ, ಅತಿಥಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕರಾಗಿ, ತೀರ್ಪುಗಾರರಾಗಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಎಸ್ಥೆಟಿಕ್ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆದ ತಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದಂಥ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರ ಮೂಲಕ ಅನೇಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಇವರು ಕೈಗೊಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಬ್ಬಾಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಪತ್ತೆಯಾದಂಥ 8ನೇ ಶತಮಾನದ ಕಿತ್ತಯ್ಯನ ಶಾಸನ, ಅದನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಒಂದು ಸುಂದರವಾಗಿಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಗಂಗಾ ವಾಸ್ತುಶೈಲಿಯ ಮಂಟಪ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಇವರೇ ಮಾಡಿದಂಥದ್ದು. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ 17ನೇ ಶತಮಾನದ ಕೋಟೆ ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣಸ್ವಾಮಿ ದೇವಾಲಯದ ಪಾರಂಪರೆಯ ದಾಖಲಾತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಇವರು ದಾಖಲಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಗಾಂಧಿ ಜನತಾ ಬಜಾರ್ ಇತ್ಯಾದಿ ಐತಿಹಾಸಿಕ ಕಟ್ಟಡಗಳ ಮರುವಿನ್ಯಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಹತ್ವವನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ಇವರು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಮಲ್ಲೇಶ್ವರದಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಬಾಲಕಿಯರ ಪ್ರೌಢಶಾಲೆ ಅದರ ಪುನಃ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜೀರ್ಣೋದ್ಧಾರ ಮರುಬಳಕೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ತೊಡಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಲೇಖನಿಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಂತ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ದ ಅರ್ಲಿ ಸಿಟಿ AD 1537ರಿಂದ 1799 ಇವರ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಂತ ಪುಸ್ತಕ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆರಂಭಿಕ ನಗರವಾದಂಥ ಪ್ರದೇಶವಾದ ಪೇಟೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅಂಡಾಕಾರದ ಕೋಟೆಯ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಿಲ್ಪ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಅನೇಕ ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನು ಇವರು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರಿಗೆ ಅನೇಕ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಹುಡುಕು ಬಂದಿವೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾಡಪ್ರಭು ಕೆಂಪೇಗೌಡ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಭಾಜನರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅನೇಕ ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ಪ್ರಬಂಧಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಇವರ ಲೇಖನಿಯಿಂದ ಹೊರಹೊಮ್ಮಿವೆ. ಅನೇಕ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರ ಲೇಖನಗಳು ಪ್ರಕಟವಾಗಿವೆ. ಪ್ರತಿಷ್ಠಿತ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅತಿಥಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕರಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅನೇಕ ಚರ್ಚೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರು ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದ್ರ ಮಧ್ಯೆನೆ 2018ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದಂಥ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಸಿಟಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಾಗಾರಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಇವರು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ವಿಖ್ಯಾತ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ IAS ಜೊತೆ ಕೂಡ ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ತಾವು ಆರಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಂಥ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಿಲ್ಪ ಅಥವಾ ವಾಸ್ತುಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸ್ತಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೇನೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಸಂಶೋಧನೆಯನ್ನು ನಡೆಸಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಕಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ವಿಶೇಷ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಯಶಸ್ವಿನಿ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಕೋರಿಕೆಗೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಕೊಂಡು ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಕೊಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೆ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು ಬಯಸ್ತಾ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಬೆಳಕು ಚೆಲ್ಲಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಮೇಡಮ್, ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಸಬೇಕು.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ದ ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಮತ್ತು BBMP ಇಬ್ರಿಗೂ ನನ್ನ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಎರಡು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೂ. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ದ ಮಿಥಿಕ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿಯಿಂದ ಜಯಸಿಂಹ ಅವರು ಈ ಒಂದು ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ನನ್ನ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸದ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆರಿಜಿನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಅಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಕಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಕೆನಾನಿಕಲ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ಗೆ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಇರೋದು. ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ವಿನ್ಯಾಸದ ಕುರಿತು ನನಗೆ ಕುತೂಹಲ ಇತ್ತು, ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಸ್ವತಃ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನವಳು. ಅದರಿಂದ ಈ ಸಂಶೋಧನೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ನನ್ನ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಆಂಗ್ಲ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಮಧ್ಯ ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡನೂ ಬಳಸ್ತೇನೆ. Bangalore's history through the ages, it starts right from, I would say, iron, because we have rock engraving, we have stone implements, etc., which were found in Kottagiri Betta in Jalhalli. That is about 1000 BCE, about 2500 BCE. So that Bengaluru itself, the earliest temple complex within the city is from the Gangapegu temple complex, and between 4th and 11th century, this was of Gangavadi of the Gangas. Which mentions Bengaluru. Which Bengaluru this is, we do not know, but we know also we find a mention of Bengal as a place. Several did before the establishment of Bengaluru. This is a list of those lakes, the earliest of which is the Begur Lake. There are certain settlements also which are in Bengaluru and Bengaluru. So many lakes and so many settlements in place. By the time Bengaluru Pete, so we have mentions of Bengaluru city. Earliest is 896. During the time of Malla Satyavaka, Bengaluru, in Tavarekere, this and in a copper plate is slightly disputed, but it's mentioned in the Epigraphia Karnataka. Coming to Bengaluru, the earliest this is when we have the earliest documentation of itself. Now, as you see in the northern portion, and you see a fortified garrison, which is the Bengaluru Kote. A larger map shows you the Pete and Kote. Now, this particular map evinced a lot of curiosity in me because you see a very urban settlement in the 18th century, and then you wonder how this happened. So my research was to find answers to these questions and also figure out why did Kempe Gowda build this center of trade. Tradesmen used to come here. We have found Roman coins too from Tiberius's time. So we do know that a lot of trade happened through this region. A factor which were the Durgas all Yelahanka Nadu. So why would someone or another town attached to some of the questions that were on my mind at that time? Into my research, I read modern urban design theories and history books weren't enough to understand how Bengal Manasara and Maya Mata. Both of them have a classification of towns slightly different. What I found were about 2 or 3 classifications which related to the painting. Hello? Yes. Howda. I'll just stop the sharing and try to log in again. Yeah.
ಶ್ರೋತೃಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ವಿನಂತಿ, ಒಂದು ತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಯಿಂದ ಅವ್ರು ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೋತಾರೆ. ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಬಫರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದು ತಾವು ನೋಡಿರಬಹುದು. ಒಳ್ಳೆ ವಿಷಯ. ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೋತಾರೋ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವರ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಮುಂದುವರಿಯುತ್ತೆ.
ಹಲೋ ಜಯಸಿಂಹ ಅವರೇ, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ಇವಾಗ?
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಹೇಳಿ.
ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ?
ಮಾಡಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು.
ಇವಾಗ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆಯಾ? ಬಫರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಆಯ್ತು, ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಮೇಡಮ್, ನೋಡೋಣ.
Okay. So I was talking about ಮಾನಸಾರ ಅಂಡ್ ಮಾಯಾಮತ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋ ಒಂದು ಟೈಪಾಲಜೀಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅದು ಹೇಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಪೇಟೆಗೆ ಹೊಂದತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. Among that, I found certain descriptions which suited the Bengaluru Pete. There is a description of Pattana where all the mercantile goods are sold, but this is by a river. Now, there is no river over here. There's a typology called Nigama, where all the classes, that is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, everybody live, and where goods are sold, and it's a place for artisans. Now, this is almost similar to Bengaluru Pete. There is another type which is called Skandavara and Senamukha. Now, it could be a Senamukha if the fort or the kote had come up at the same time as the Pete. Now, we do not have documentation to support this. We know that the kote was built by Chikdev Rajavadiyar. Whether a smaller kote existed before it was built, we do not know. There is no documentation to show that, unfortunately. The earliest description we find of Bengaluru Pete is in Shiv Bharat, Paramanand. So in Shiv Bharat, which is contemporary to Shivaji's time, he describes only the Pete with its fort, because the Pete also had a fortified wall. And he also describes the palace within the fort, where the Champu Radha Madhava Vilasa was composed. So this leads us to believe that the Pete was probably where the palace was, and if there was a garrison or if there was a fortified garrison, we do not know about it as yet. So we can't make conclusions on that. So these are the typologies that match Bengaluru Pete, and there is a way of organizing the streets. One is called Kartari Dandaka. Now, Kartari Dandaka is where axial streets meet between north and south, as in here, and east and west. So, if there is prominent street bifurcation like this, it is called a Kartari Dandaka plan. So, we do know that all these kind of terminologies and layouts match the Bengaluru Pete. And it was also a norm to have a Mangalavidi all around. If you look closely at the Pete plan, you will see an inner and outer fortification. You see 8 gates which match the layout which is given on the left-hand side. And it also matches the number of sewage outlets, etc. So along these gates, you can see the gateway which is also garrisoned, and it also has like a turret and other fortifications. So one of the sketches of Robert Home is also very informative. I'll show it a little later. How was the Pete organized? Now, there were about 20 odd Petes within the Pete of, I call them sub-districts or sub-Petes, and each are named after the good that it was sold. The social class which traded in that particular good was residing in that particular zone. And a temple which they worship was also located within the Pete. So this looks like a very well-contained, very well-zoned layout. I was comparing it to the bazaar layouts which is described in Mayamata. And the layout matches this mandala exactly. For example, in northwestern area, rice is supposed to be sold, and that is exactly where you find Akkipete. Where you should have bazaar for clothes is where you find Aralepete. Where you should have a bazaar for salt is where you find Upparpete, and so on. So all of this leads us to think that whoever organized it, whoever designed this, had a good working knowledge of the canonical texts. Now, this particular, the legend says that, two oxen were meditated upon and they set the action path and the boundary of the Pete. This kind of tradition is common between both Etruscan and India. So all these kind of layouts and the similarities lead us to believe that this was a deliberate action of settlement, and that this was not only a payday, but it was also a Rajdhani because of the indication of palace, a note on the palace from the Shiv Bharat. If you look closely at the Pete plan here, I have just colored the Mutyal Pete and Tigalara Pete in pink and yellow. Now, Mutyal Pete is organized around the Ranganatha Swami temple, and Tigalara Pete is organized around the Dharmaraya temple. We know the association of Tigalas to the layout of the Pete and the workings of the Pete itself, because Tigers were not just horticulturists, but they also maintained the water supply of the place. Coming to how drinking water was supplied to the Pete, the northwestern portions derived water from Dharmambudi Kere, whereas the northeastern part was supplied from Sampangi Kere. I will talk about Karaga festival a bit later, but these water bodies were also honored through that particular festival. There are scholars like Smriti Srinivas who deliberate on the establishment of natural nodes and how sacred nodes are built after that, antecedent being the natural node. So here, if we look at the particular layout of Bengaluru, you also find Kalyanis within, which are formalized water bodies as compared to the informal water bodies, which are the Dharmambudi, Sampangi, and the Siddhikatte. Now, water flowed through the moat around the Pete as well and continued into the moat of the Kote. And drinking water, Rice says, was laid on streets directly, and it was, taken by residents in a trough. So I'm inclined to believe that the gradient between the lakes was also a factor to settle people in this particular manner. The typology of temples that we find within the Pete, what's called later which style. These are provincial versions of what we see in Hampi or Vijayanagara. Reading after modern design theories, you can categorize, you can read the Pete in 5 different ways. The bound of the edge, which is the fortification, and the main parts north and north-south, which is the Avenue Road, and the east-western principal axis, which can be considered as the main parts. The district being the sub-Pete, which I discussed before. The landmarks being the temples themselves, and nodes being both sacred and natural in nature. We see the presence of both basic and composite pillars, just like we see in Vijayanagara. So it is safe to assume that the Pals were continuing in the tradition what we saw in the capital of the empire, the Karnataka Empire. I was just talking about various sub-petes and their associations to trade, caste, and religious worship. So there is a table that I made. This was based on Narna Swami's work, where the item traded, the caste, and the temple associated with that particular sub-district is listed. This is a sketch by Robert Home, which gives us an idea of the fortification of the Pete itself. We see a door, we see gateway, we also see a Nandi, we see the thorny which he describes, which are the Sigekai plantation. And what we are looking at is the inner fortification and outer fortification. So this leads us to believe that this particular city itself was well guarded, well defended against robbers, against waylayers, and people could trade in peace over here. Now, by creating this kind of a secure place, Kempegowda increased the revenue manifold. At one point, Bengaluru and other areas were yielding him about 30,000 pagodas, a lot of money. And this prompted Kempegowda to establish his own mint, for which he was arrested by the empire and he had to spend 5 years in prison in Anegundi. But because of his leadership skills, and he was released before the Talikota, where he fought alongside the Vinagara army. So these are interesting details that come into play. These photographs are from 93. It shows Avenue Road. Now, what is really interesting for me is to look at how the streets was laid out, the scale of street, which is quite fine. And you see open drains, you see chapdi kallu over it, flat roofs mostly. The better ones have flat roofs, and then you have thatch roofs. You have also got tiled roofing and lot of coconut trees and plantation within. To see these kind of trees within Pete now is unimaginable, but you see the entire avenue laid with trees at that particular point of time. This is a zoomed in image from a 1855 photograph. Here you see thatched roof, and you see that the fortification of the Pete has come down, and there's only a little bit of fencing left at this particular point of time. The gateways, boundary stones offer us another story. The boundary towers were so called because one assumed that they set the boundary of the city, of the growth of the city. But these were in fact watchtowers, which served as a warning signal to the Pete if there was an army approaching the city. What you see on the right-hand side, this Tiruvarikal, these are markers from Chola times, which say that a donation has been made to the temple. So it is a marker of endowment. We see a typology of Islamic architecture coming in the late 17th century when the Mughal army invested Pete. At this particular point of time, they built a small masjid called the Sangeet Jama Masjid, which is the first masjid of Bengaluru Pete. This existed between these 4 columns. Those 4 columns in front of the mirror actually mark the old location of the old mosque. Now it is completely rebuilt, so we don't find any clues to the type of architecture. But there is a photograph from 1970 in Fazlul Hasan's book, if anybody is interested. Around this masjid was the Taramandal area established during Tipu's time, where the rockets were being made. So this was a primary target for invading British army at that point of time, and the masjid's dome was damaged during the invasion. I was talking about Karagra. and the Tigalas. So this particular the root of the Karaga and boundary of the Pete. In Karaga is celebrated in other Petes, other towns as well. But what is unique in Bengaluru is that it brings two communities together. Somehow they have found dialogue through a celebration of nature. Tigalas carry, since Karaga is coming and is around the corner, I would just elaborate a little bit on it. Now, Tigalas mark the boundary and the sacred notes. They also go to the natural notes, Sampangi carry. And what they carry now is water. But in Smriti Srinivasa's documentation, she talks about earth, which is secured by the priest and brought into the temple, worshipped. And he dresses up as Draupadi. Tigalas call themselves Vahni Kulashatriyas. They came from Draupadi's clan. And they mark the boundary of the sacred notes as well. This particular stops at Talkal Masandara. Each community has a different story, which puts the particular community in the superior version of the legend. But it is beautiful to note how it stops at Talkal Masandarga and then proceeds and circumambulates the Pete. The temples that are found in the boundaries of the Kote Anjaneya, the Annama temple, which probably came up during the Pox breakouts, and within the Pete, the prominent temples remain the Ranganatha Swami and the Taraya temple. So this is the extent of the old Pete in today's Bangalore. Is actually a zoomed in version, because now the city has expanded beyond limits. I have also located various towers which are attributed to Immadi Kempegowda. An inscription to this effect is found in the Ranganath Swami temple, which is a beautiful temple complex having varied pillar types. Coming to Bengaluru Kote, or the Oval Fort, which is set on a little higher ground. One of the earliest images of the complete fort is found in one of Robert Holmes' drawings itself. This is a painting looking at the Kote from the Pete. So what you see on the right-hand side is a bit of Siddhikatte. And then you see the third enclosure of the Delhi Gate, which does not exist anymore. You see the Cavaliers and you see the Fosbury of the Kote as well. This was the original layout of the Kote. This belongs to a typology which is mentioned in Manasara and Mayavata as Jaladurga. So a Jaladurga is usually encircled by a river. Here you can consider the water body as the moat that goes around the fortification. Now here too you see a higher fortification and a lower fortification surrounding it after the moat. That's the Fosbury. On the top, the fort had two gates. One was the Delhi gate and the Mysore gate was towards the southern region. The palace and the temple complex was located west of Brahma, like it is prescribed in the Shilpa Shastras. Why I call it a palace and a temple complex is that the reason for calling it is that the entry for the temple was from within the palace. The Venkatramana Swami temple was never meant to be a public temple. It was a royal temple. So it is safe to assume that both these were planned during the time of Chittadeva Vadia. The installation of Venkateshwara is attributed to him by his institution in Kottanur, which clearly states that he installed the deity. Thinking is that there was probably a dilapidated mandapa, and he explained with the temple. A document to this effect is found in Mysore archives. So there could have been probably an earlier palace before the new palace construction was begun by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan in about 1781. What you notice is that the temple is located in the inner prakara of the palace with an outer prakara, which was the parade ground for the army. Here, mostly you can also observe some tanks or some water bodies and a lot of units for storage of artillery. On the right hand side, here very in the Garbha and the Antarala portion, and Manichanda Adhisthana in the Navaranga Mantapa. It also has a unique a four-sided pillar, which is credited to the time of Chikadevaraja. It's a feature of Vadiya style of architecture. These two are photographs from 1855 and 1860, and this is where I found that the Pete fortification was almost lost. It could also be because this particular opening, even in 1791 map, it looks like that was contiguous, or it was broken. So it could be that you find fortification on the other route, but unfortunately we don't have photographs to that effect. But what you do observe here is the inner fortification, the moat, and the lower Fosbury. This is the remaining portion of the fort. It is a portion, is a 1/3 of Delhi Gate. Originally, Delhi Gate had 7 entrances, but this was on the same ground level. So the British thought that once they gained entry, it was easy to come inside because they weren't, the levels were not up and down. The portion where David Baird was imprisoned is found in the remaining portion of the Oval Fort. You find a bastion, a smaller bastion, and about 3 gateways in the remaining portion. So this is the remaining portion of the fort. And on the on the right hand side, you find some paintings which give you a complete picture. You see galleries from which Tipu used to watch the parade of his army, and also the western and eastern portions. The Zanana portion is a little lost now, but we do have the other 3 sides complete. So this particular palace that Hyder Ali and Tipu built was based on the Shira Palace, which in turn was based on the plan and layout of Shivappa Nayaka Palace of Shivamogga. Portion, the entrance to the main to the palace like is depicted on the left-hand side in the painting. This is an avenue reading during this time was established as Cypress Garden. Here number and the extent is not very great, but see the dome over. So when the establishment of cantonment of one war about 8. The city starts by feet. So cantonment is eastern portion. They remain on the south with the carbon park into cantonment even to carry out tanks that are mentioned. Tank, lal sewage except to agriculture fields during the 19 even in 19th century. So you can safely assume that it was so. Soon after Bangalore starts expanding, what is interesting is that the north-south axial road, which is the high speed now Avenue Road, continues to make its presence to the city and continues to dictate the layout of the city. Later town layouts extensions were happened during about the 19th century. Plans for which was made in 1894 and 1895 when the Queen Vani Vilas Sanidhana was regent. This particular point of time, you can see that the layout is still dictated by community, and there is, a nice planning system where they are trying to make the best of the situation. Interestingly, the plan of Baswangudi still reminds you of a mandala with the Brahma in the center, and you have the bazaar set coming right to the Brahma. So it is safe to assume that even during this time, there were people who are familiar with Shilpa Shastras, and that was a kind of the influence was apparent in the town planning. Now, the 100 feet wide roads which are indicated here were initially meant to carry trams, but perhaps it was the idea was abandoned after World Wars broke out. So this is how the axial route, the high street, continues to make a presence in the in present city. And you can see that the various routes and inner ring roads and outer ring roads still follow the shape of the Bengaluru Pete. Now, of course, it's expanding further and further, so we might see some changes to that. So before I end, I would like to describe the mandala that we saw earlier. This is a description of the bazaar that you find in Mahamata. A street encircles the palace of the place of Brahma, and it is there that the bazaar for betel and similar produce, for fruits and for articles of value should be installed. Between the square of Isha and Mahendra Gate is the bazaar for meat, fish, dried products, and for vegetables. Between the Mahendra Gate and the square of Agni is the bazaar for solid and liquid foods. The ironmongers are between Agni Square and that of Grihakshata. Between this last and of Nirti are the coppersmiths, and between the square of the Pitra and of Pushpadanta is the clothing bazaar. Between this last and the square of Samirana is the bazaar for grains, rice, and fodder. Between the square of Vayu and that of Bhalata is the bazaar for fabrics and materials of that kind. And there is too the bazaar of foodstuffs such as salt and oil. Between this and square of Isha is the bazaar for perfumes, flowers. Such are the 9 bazaars established in the center and on the periphery of the town. So they are describing 9 particular commodities. Of course, it is expanded to about 20 in Bengaluru, Pete. Along the streets leading to the center is the bazaar, where are found gem, gold, clothes, madder, black pepper, people seed, and ointment, as well as honey, ghee, oil, and medicaments. So you can assume that the Nagatapete relates to that. So these kind of descriptions are found in the Shilpa Shastras, and it could very well be that the Pete was established on these lines. Thank you very much. Jaisimha, if there are any questions, I would like to take them now.
Thank you very much, madam. It was a wonderful talk. I request all the audience to type your questions in the comment box. ಶ್ರೋತೃಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ವಿನಂತಿ, ತಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳನ್ನು ತಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ ಬಾಕ್ಸ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಟೈಪ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಎಸ್ ಕೆ ಅರುಣಿ ಅವರು ವೆರಿ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಟಿವ್ ಅಂತ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವೆರಿ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಟಿವ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
ವಿಠಲ್ ಪೋದ್ದಾರ್ ಅವರು ಸಜೆಸ್ಟ್ ಸಮ್ ಮೆಜರ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಪ್ರಿಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಹೆರಿಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು.
I completely agree with that, and we have been making efforts in that direction. In fact, we do pro bono activities too. ಇವರು ಪ್ರಸನ್ನ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಗಂಗಾ ಮಂಟಪ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಹೆಬ್ಬಾಳ್ ಕಿತ್ತಯ್ಯ 8th century ಸಿಕ್ಕಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಇನ್ಸ್ಕ್ರಿಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಎಪಿಗ್ರಾಫಿ ಡೇಟಾ, ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಫೈಂಡ್ data. We do conserve that. Conserving heritage building challenge, because some of them are privately owned, some of them are publicly owned. I'm talking about built heritage. There is a great heritage and the socio-cultural heritage of Guru. So I think all of them are equally important. The city is fortunate that we have many organizations which are working towards this in this direction. How to check unplanned urbanization of Bengaluru? So that is only possible if we limit image and further, unchecked growth. We keep seeking investment into the city, industry wise as well. Bengaluru is saturated now, and perhaps we should put a limit. You see, Ramakrishna Hegde, when he was chief, he tried to bring in such a legislation, but it was struck down as the reason being that it went against the constitution. Gives people freedom to move in any part of the country. So there are legal hazards as well, but I am with you. I don't think Bengaluru can take anymore, and we have to limit, and we to take investment off from Bengaluru and develop other cities. I think there is some effort in this region, in this particular direction. Let's hope they are successful in that. Which
thank you, Madam. Padmaja Desai has a question.
Textiles for architecture.
All right.
Yeah. I was just reading her question, Jaisimha. which canonical text tells about defense architecture of the city. The texts that I have referred to are called Manasara and Mayavata. Manasara is written by Prasanna Kumar to the Samhita of Varaha Mihira. Now in Brihat Samhita, you find interestingly the water mixtures as well. He describes three types. One is based on meat, and other one is used for deities and instruction. Find a lot of description in both Manasara and Mayamata.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Rahul Ramesh has a question. Why were 2 forts of Bangalore destroyed?
I don't think there was a particular intention of destroying the forts, except during war, which was the Third Mysore War, when people, had to breach the fort to enter. That was when some amount of damage happened, but it was rebuilt. The Kote was rebuilt by Purnaya when Tipu himself dismantled it. Because after 1791 war, he did not want the British to get their hands on such a good fort. So as far as the Oval Fort is concerned, he dismantled it, and Purnaya rebuilt that. Now Pete, I think it was dismantled over time. Even the Oval Fort, after Victor Albert Road was established, and was making some amount of, you lost the phosphorus and the moat with the road. Gradually, the stones were also used to build hospitals. Is one of the explanations. This happened after the plague breakout. Probably there was a shortage of material, and mill was handy here. But in this report of the Mysore Palace report done by Ramakrishna Rao and Vishwesvaraya, they do a reconnaissance of area. The fort wall at about 4 feet, so that the patients can have a place in convalesce. And they also call for protection of conservation of, and they mentioned that the Ganesha temple within the Delhi Gate is a new structure and it doesn't go. That's an interesting report to read. Is I think 1935 report. So at that time, some amount was left, and I think gradually we lost it. Over time, probably also on our part. But we are lucky to have some amount of documentation in terms of both the manuscripts and maps. Probably we can make a small 3D image for our own satisfaction now.
Yeah, Dr. S.K. Aruni has a question. According to sources, a large Agrahara was within the Pete township of Bangalore. Could you locate it?
Sir, there are two particular regions which interest. One is the Mutyala Pete around Ranganatha Swami temple, where Brahmins were living. But there is a description even during Bryce's time that there were Brahmins and teachers living near Siddipet. If it's an Agrahara, I think that might have been the location. We could discuss it further like we always do.
Yeah. Ravindra Hotti has a question. What type of rocks were used to construct the pillars of the temple?
The pillars of the temple mostly peninsula gneiss over here, and In places like Hampi, it was granite because granite is available there. But here, it is peninsular gneiss. That is what is used.
Yeah, thank you, madam. One regarding Agrahara, they say that KP Agrahara is just outside the old town. Right now, where the railway line, the Goripalya Magdi road comes, it is just outside the old existing Pete.
So that is what I'm wondering about, because Muttapete is getting up because we know Brahmins used to live there. We know that this particular temple was endowed. But to find Agrahara layout itself may be a little tough. Probably we should study 2 or 3 sources and look at the Mysore archaeological reports a little bit more. There, what I find interesting is just being mentioned, Brahmins being mentioned near Siddhikate. We could also look at the Dharmamudi Kere, because establishing Agharas near Keres, that was the practice. I think I need to look at it a little bit more to pinpoint and say, this is probably where the Agrahara was. We know that Agrahara in the north, beyond Sankitak.
Yeah, I request the audience, if you have any questions, you can type in the comment box. If this is it, we can. If there are no questions, we'll come to the end of today's talk. It was a wonderful talk, madam. Probably very few of the researchers or architects would have done an analytical study of any of the cities in Bangalore. Yeah, there are a few cities which researchers have done study based on the Vastu Shastra text, but this a very few research have been done on Bangalore. So in this regard, it is a wonderful talk, and even the audience were very enlightened audience whose questions was very relevant. So in this regard, it is a new insight for researchers to do further research on Bangalore on this topic. So with this, we thank all the audience and also our honored guest for giving a wonderful talk in this series. And I also thanks Sri Prasanna Kumar to have introduced the speaker. Before ending, I'd like to announce on April 3rd, probably April, just a moment, I'll just check it on April 3rd, Sunday, 11 o'clock, we have a talk on subnationalism to nationalism, historicizing the resistance of Dondia Wagha, by Dr. Ashwath Narayan, retired professor, Bangalore University. So I request all the audience to join to this talk. With this, we end today's talk and thank our guest and also all the audience. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you.